Alrighty, I believe we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Straight Red Football. The latest transfer news in football, the latest news in football, we're going to be talking about Newcastle. Breaking news this morning, we've got an Ornstein bomber. Newcastle bidding 80 million euro bid for Benjamin Šeško from RB Leipzig. We believe that the player would prefer to go to Manchester United, but we believe the club would prefer him to go to Newcastle. So we'll talk about that bit. Do Newcastle have a chance of taking this player away from Manchester United? Who is ahead of who in the race? We're also going to talk about Manchester United offering Rasmus Højlund, confirmed by Fabrizio Romano yesterday, in a swap deal with Leipzig for Benjamin Šeško. We'll talk about if Šeško is the right kind of player that Manchester United should be looking for, by the way, because they've been looking at a few strikers in this transfer window, and they seem to have settled on Šeško at the last minute. So we're talking about, you know, Manchester United's pursuit of Šeško. Is he the right man? Is he the proven, prolific striker? Remember the three Ps that Manchester United fans were talking about at the beginning of the season. The three Ps, yeah? Proven, prolific striker. Is Šeško that? Yeah, we've got a couple of stats to show you about Benjamin Šeško as well, and we'll go through that. We'll also be talking about why I believe that Isak will end up at Liverpool. Absolutely, positively. I'm 99% sure that Alexander Isak is going to end up with Newcastle within this transfer window. Liverpool made a bid of £110 million. That was rejected immediately by Newcastle. The media is saying that Liverpool have given up and they're not going to bid again. I think it's quite obvious that Liverpool will bid again, and it's quite obvious that Isak will end up at Liverpool, which is why Newcastle are bidding this morning for Benjamin Šeško. So we'll talk about that. And we'll also talk about Viktor Gyökeres, yeah? After his 10-minute cameo against Spurs in Hong Kong the other day, a lot of people are convinced that Viktor Gyökeres is going to flop, yeah, at Arsenal. So we'll talk about Viktor Gyökeres. Will he be a success? Will he not? If anybody in the chat wants to let me know if the mic sounds okay, as long as the mic sounds okay and the quality of the video is okay, we should be set to go. I will do a quick mic check myself. I can hear myself. So let's crack on. Right. Newcastle, 80 million euro bid this morning for Leipzig striker Benjamin Šeško. All right. So let's talk about this. First and foremost, the battle between Newcastle and Manchester United. The player is currently away on holiday and is making a decision, okay, on what he wants to do next. Now, normally the way that these transfers work, all right, is that the club goes directly to the player's agent and gets an agreement with the player's agent, right? And once they get the agreement with the player's agent and the green light from the player, they then go into club-to-club negotiations. This is a very, very different scenario. Newcastle have done it the other way around. They don't have an agreement with Benjamin Šeško as of yet. They don't have the green light from Benjamin Šeško that he is going to sign for Newcastle if a bid is accepted from by Leipzig, yeah? So that's the problem that they've got. And that's because we all think the player really wants to go and play for Manchester United. Now, like I said before, I'm sure like Newcastle are a big club. You know, they've got Saudi Arabian oil money behind them for now. There's rumours that that money might run out, yeah, and that the PIF might drop them. But for now, Newcastle are a club that do have, yeah, big money behind them. They're in the Champions League, you know, massive fan base. You know, we all know about, you know, the stadium, St. James's Park. You'll be playing in front of 40, 50,000 every single week. So Newcastle actually is, in my opinion, yeah, a big Premier League club. Obviously, they don't have the same level of pull that Manchester United do. So this is where the battle's going to be. Leipzig, right, will prefer him, yeah? Or Leipzig, excuse me. Leipzig will prefer him to go to Newcastle, right? And that's what I think the deal is, because Leipzig, right, have held firm in their valuation of this player at around 70 to 80 million euros. We know that Arsenal, right, were in negotiations with Leipzig nearly all summer long, yeah, because it's believed that Šeško was the very, very first choice for Arsenal instead of Viktor Gyökeres, yeah. So we know Arsenal and Leipzig, yeah, went, you know, toe to toe for months and months on end, yeah, over Leipzig's valuation of the player. Arsenal couldn't come to an agreement. Arsenal thought they were valuing the player too high, yeah? So Leipzig, yeah, haven't had anybody meet their valuation of this player all summer until Newcastle. I believe Newcastle was the first club to come in, yeah, and make a bid, and that bid has actually come in and met the valuation of the player. So for me, Leipzig would prefer to sell to Newcastle. The player would prefer to go to Manchester United. We will have to see, yeah, what happens in this deal. He's away. He's away on holiday. He's going to make his decision. We should know where he's going to end up signing, right? We should know where Benjamin Šeško is going to end up signing, possibly within the next 24 to 48 hours. You know, when I look at this deal, right, from a Manchester United perspective quickly, I'm struggling to understand, and if someone can tell me, I'm struggling to understand why Manchester United are so interested in Benjamin Šeško so late in the window, because they were linked, yeah, with all kinds of strikers, right? So Manchester United were linked with Viktor Osimhen at one point, okay? So we know that Manchester United were linked with Viktor Osimhen. We know that at one point Manchester United were quite heavily linked with Viktor Gyökeres. And now it seems like late in the window, it now seems like they've sort of turned their attention to Benjamin Šeško. And it just makes me think, you know, like, what does Benjamin Šeško actually bring to Manchester United Football Club? He brings the ability to hold up the ball. He's a far better target man, right, than Rasmus Højlund, right? I would definitely say that. I think we've seen all season, yeah, that Manchester United have struggled to get out of the build-up phase, right? They've struggled to get out of the build-up phase. They've got players in the build-up phase like Casemiro who aren't really ball players, right? Casemiro's not really a press-resistant player. Casemiro isn't really very good in tight spaces, which is why Ruben Amorim is dropping Bruno Fernandes deeper into the midfield. So you've got Ruben Amorim now asking Bruno Fernandes to drop back deeper, right? And move away from the forward line and come back deeper to sort of help them get out of the build-up. And that's because, like I said before, they have a problem at Manchester United where they don't really have sort of a press-resistant DM. They've been looking for one since they were targeting Frankie de Jong under Erik ten Hag 2 seasons ago. But nevertheless, yeah, it is what it is. So they're looking for that kind of player. Now, because they struggle so much in the build-up phase to get into that middle third of the pitch, they often end up looking for a long ball out, and they often end up looking for an exit ball out. And when that long ball ends up, yeah, reaching Rasmus Højlund isn't very good at controlling the ball. So his first touch is always often sloppy. He's quite sloppy with his back to goal. Now, Benjamin Šeško is a big upgrade over Rasmus Højlund, yeah, when you talk about, you know, receiving the ball in those areas. Any sort of long balls, any sort of line-breaking passes that come through, Benjamin Šeško is infinitely better with his back to the goal than somebody like a Rasmus Højlund. Having said that, though, he's not prolific. And again, we talk about Manchester United and Newcastle. Proven prolific striker. You see on the screen here, Benjamin Šeško's record last season. He averages about 1 in 3 goals, right? He averages anywhere from a goal every 3 to a goal every 2.5 games. If you look at his record since 2022-2023, going all the way back to Salzburg, right? Last season, 13 goals in 33 games. I think this is just in the league, by the way. We're talking about the league at the minute. 13 league goals in 33 games. 2023-2024, 14 league goals in 31 games. I believe last season he did outperform his XG. So his XG last season, I believe off the top of my head, was actually 10 goals. And he scored 13. So he did sort of outperform his XG. So there's no sort of immediate signs, yeah, that he's receiving lots and lots of chances and he's wasting chances in front of goal, right? He's receiving all of these, you know, tap-ins and he's failing to convert, right? There's no sign of that when you look at the XG versus the XA. But having said that, the guy isn't prolific. Now, I haven't watched a lot of Benjamin Šeško. Maybe it's because of the kind of areas he finds himself in the pitch. Maybe he's a guy who drops deep into that midfield, so he's receiving the ball in deeper areas, further away from the box, which of course lowers, yeah, the amount of opportunities you have to score. You know, there's a big difference between somebody like him, yeah, and somebody who's maybe a bit more of perhaps a penalty box finisher, right? Maybe somebody like an Ollie Watkins who's got a little bit more presence in the actual 6-yard box. Maybe doesn't drop deep as much, etc., etc. So we're looking at those things at the minute, right? And I'm trying to understand, like, Manchester United. And I'd like to hear in the comment section from Manchester United fans, are you 100% sure, right, that Benjamin Šeško is worth the 60 million pounds or 60 million euros that it's probably going to take to sign him? Now, what's interesting is Leipzig have asked, yeah, for Rasmus Højlund, and that's been confirmed by Fabrizio Romano. I'll see if I can get that up on the screen. I've got some other things up on the screen in a minute, but you take my word for it. Yesterday, there is a swap deal that could be on there. The problem is Højlund isn't really interested, yeah, in doing that deal, and that's what it seems like at the moment. So we'll quickly have a look at Højlund in a minute, but it looks like Rasmus Højlund at the minute is going to refuse to leave Manchester United. We'll have to wait and see. So there's going to possibly have to be quite a difficult conversation there. If you look at Rasmus Højlund's stats in a minute on the screen there, you can see last season, you know, league goals, 4 league goals in 32 games. And Manchester United paid the best part of 60 to 70 million pounds for him, plus add-ons. I mean, you have to say, yeah, for me, with Rasmus Højlund, there's been a failing there from Manchester United at both the club level and at the player level. So I do think, yeah, the club should bear some small responsibility for the reason why Rasmus Højlund has failed so much at the football club. Because I will say this about Rasmus Højlund, and again, maybe it's him, maybe it's the club, but Rasmus Højlund is actually one of the fastest players in the Premier League in a straight line. A lot of people don't know that. Like, Rasmus Højlund is incredibly quick, yeah, when there's space in behind. 9 times out of 10, yeah, if Rasmus Højlund and the defender are running for a ball and there's space in behind and are running in a straight line, Højlund's going to beat the defender to that ball every time. Manchester United, I think, did a straight line speed test on him in training and recorded his speed, right, when he joined the club. And he was faster in a straight line than Marcus Rashford. He is legitimately the fastest player in a straight line in that entire squad. So again, like, Højlund, yeah, and spacing behind. When there's spacing behind and he gets a clear run through on goal, right, 9 times out of 10, he's going to get there before the defender and the keeper. He's extremely quick. But like I said before, he's never really been able to exploit any use of that pace at Manchester United. Whether that's down to the system, whether that's down to the coaching, I don't know. Whether that's down to him. But I don't like him as a player. I don't think he's Manchester United standard, and I don't think he's Manchester United quality. And I personally think that Rasmus Højlund should take a look at himself, and I think that Højlund should take a look at his goal scoring record here, yeah? And I think you should look at that and say, look, have an honest chat with yourself, look in the mirror. Am I Manchester United standard material? Because they've paid 60 million for me and I've scored best part of 14 league goals, right? In the best part of 2 years, right? It ain't looking too good, right? So I personally think that he should be at least willing, yeah, to accept a bench position instead of, you know, in my opinion. But he's going to refuse to leave, right? You know what it is. He's going to refuse to leave. So my point is, United are going to find it, in my opinion, quite difficult to do this deal. I think Šeško, the player, wants to be at Manchester United. That's my opinion. I think Manchester United is his preference. I'm not saying he's, you know, desperately doesn't want to go to Newcastle. I think he'd be relaxed about going to Newcastle. It's a big club, 40, 50,000 a week in the stadium, and they do have Champions League football, okay? But I'm just saying, I think Manchester United have that pull. He would prefer to go there. But I don't think, right, I'm not 100% sure that United can either meet the valuation. I'm not sure they can meet Leipzig's valuation, or if they will meet it, right? I think, like I said before, they might be dependent on a player swap or some outgoings, right? And let me quickly say before we move on to a slightly different topic, which is going to be Isak to Liverpool. And I will come back to this later on, all right? But I want to say this. Manchester United fans, this move, yeah, for Benjamin Šeško late in the window. Again, remember, Man United weren't tracking Benjamin Šeško until very, very late in this window. Victor Osimhen, Dusan Vlahovic, Ollie Watkins, Viktor Gyökeres. There were all kinds of strikers. Right? That Manchester United were linked with long before they were linked with Šeško. This move reminds me of when Casemiro signed for United. That's what this move reminds me of. If Manchester United get this deal done, it reminds me of, maybe the word panic buy is a bit too strong. But if you remember, yeah, when Erik ten Hag became manager of Manchester United, they spent nearly a whole summer trying to prize away Frankie de Jong from Newcastle to get him as their press-resistant DM to help them pass out and get from the build-up phase to the progression phase. And they spent a whole summer chasing Frankie de Jong, and it was holding up all of their business because the deal was, you know, going to be worth a lot of money, 60, 70, 80, 90 million, etc., etc. It was worth a lot of money. So it was holding up their whole business, right? And in the end, right, de Jong stood firm and said, I don't want to play for Manchester United, and stayed at Barcelona. And if you remember what happened, right, couple of weeks or just short to the end of the transfer window, United ended up signing Casemiro and ended up giving him 350,000 a week. What's he on? 300 or 350,000 pounds a week, and ended up paying Real Madrid 60 million pounds or so for Casemiro, which I think personally is one of United's worst. But Erik ten Hag, in my opinion, wasn't a very good manager. And Erik ten Hag is partly responsible for the reason why Manchester United are in the state they're in at the minute, because he spent £400 million on some of the worst players I've ever fucking seen in my life. Like, if you look at his record of spending, right, and look at the players that he showed out for, 60 million, 300 grand a week for Casemiro. Højlund, 70 million. Who else did he buy? I'm trying to think now. There was some absolute Anthony, there's a decent player in Anthony somewhere, and we'll talk about that in a second. There's a decent player somewhere in Anthony, yeah, but nevertheless, right? I mean, Erik ten Hag spent 400 million on the best part of garbage, which United are now trying and struggling to get rid of. So he's part of the reason why they're in this situation as well, all right? So yeah, that's my opinion on that. I think it's going to be very, very interesting and a lot closer than people think, right? Craig Hope from the Daily Mail is the journalist to follow on this. He's been locked into this story from the get-go. Obviously, David Ornstein is also a tier 1 journalist. But if you're looking for journalists on Twitter, right, who are at the heart of this story, Craig Hope is a direct source into Newcastle Football Club. And you can see here there he's saying Newcastle's offer this morning £65.5 million plus 4.4 million for add-ons. Šeško is for Šeško, but the club side of things was never thought to be the biggest problem. The biggest problem is Benjamin Šeško's wishes. Again, Newcastle have no agreement as it stands with the player. Newcastle fans, Manchester United fans, what do you think about Benjamin Šeško? Does he fit the right profile of player for your squad, for your football team? Like I said before, at Manchester United, he would be the replacement for Rasmus Højlund. What does he give you over Rasmus Højlund? He gives you the ability to hold up the ball, all right? He gives you the ability to hold up the ball. Probably a better player than Rasmus Højlund in tight spaces. He can pick up the ball in deeper areas. He can get his head up. He can turn. He can make a pass. And he's also quick. He's not quicker than Højlund, but he's also quick. And again, it's very, very rare, yeah, in today's football that you get a striker, right, that can be physically imposing, tall, and quick, right? Normally, big thank you, Boxing Hotspur. Big thank you. Thanks for your comment, man. Boxing Hotspur, does the mic sound clear and does the audio and visual sound clear for you? If so, let me know. But yeah, for me, Manchester United getting Šeško, you get a clear improvement, yeah, over a target man. All right, you get a clear improvement possibly over in aerial ability. You get a clear improvement in ability to actually pass. Šeško has that ability to make clever and quick turns, first time passes with the back to goal. So you do get an improvement. You get the improvement with the back to goal. But again, Manchester United fans, you are paying, right, £65 million, right, for this player. Unless you're swapping Rasmus Højlund, right, you are going to be paying £60 million. Is Benjamin Šeško the 3 Ps? Is he the prolific, proven striker that you guys need? Statistically, if you look at his stats, the stats will tell you, and these are very shallow stats, right? But the shallow stats would tell you, no, he's not. That's what the shallow stats would tell you. The stats would tell you that this is a guy who's basically a 1 goal every 3 games player, right? And maybe, if you're looking for a 20 goal a season player, maybe it's worth waiting a little bit longer and trying to go into January. One thing I will quickly say when I move on is, maybe United don't actually need, or maybe these clubs, maybe football's changed. We've seen what's happened with PSG. PSG don't have a prolific goal scorer. PSG don't have a prolific number 9. They signed Gonzalo Ramos for a lot of money and he hasn't delivered. But what PSG do is they've got several players. They've got 3-4 players that can all chip in with 10, 12, 15 goals a season. Maybe that's where football's heading. Maybe United and Newcastle don't actually need Benjamin Šeško to come in and score 15, 20, 25 goals a season. Maybe they don't need that. Maybe they need him to come in and score 10. They've got Cunha, they've got Mbeumo. Mbeumo scored 20 in the league last season. If Mbeumo can get 15 in the league, if Cunha can get 10, and Šeško can come in and get 10 or 12, maybe that's an improvement. They can get some goals from Bruno Fernandes. They can get some goals from maybe Kobe Mainoo. Maybe they can get goals from elsewhere, etc., etc. So maybe, like I said before, football's changing. Right, I want to move on quickly, just quickly. I will come back to this, to Alexander Isak to Liverpool. I believe that this deal is 100% going to happen. Like 100%. I think we know it's going to happen because we can see that Newcastle have made the bid this morning for Šeško. There's no way Newcastle are making a £65 million bid for Šeško if Isak isn't on his way out. And like I said before, right, one of my biggest supporters on my boxing channel is a Newcastle fan. And I believe, first and foremost, that Newcastle should sell this player, Alexander Isak. I think his stock in football has never been higher. And I don't think Alexander Isak's stock, will ever be higher in football than what it is now. For me, in terms of his valuation, I think it's only going to go down here from here. Listen, when a player comes to you, right, and a player tells you, rightly or wrongly, right, that they don't want to be a part of your football club anymore, and I'll get Isak's stats on the screen, which are phenomenal for Newcastle, right? But when a football player comes to you and says, "Look, I don't want to be a part of your squad anymore," it's if you keep that player, if Newcastle were to keep this player, right, against his own will, his valuation will drop immediately if he doesn't start scoring goals. So if Newcastle were to keep Alexander Isak going into next season, right, and Isak doesn't have a good start to the season, for whatever reason, right, Isak comes in and Isak doesn't have a good start to the season, then his valuation is going to astronomically drop, right, from that, that 150 million pound valuation. That is what Newcastle are looking for. In an ideal world, Newcastle are looking for about 150 million. We all think, yeah, it's going to go down to something around the 135 mark, but that's what they're looking for. If he stays at Newcastle and doesn't have a great start to the season, and he looks disgruntled and he looks like he doesn't want to be there, Newcastle are going to lose that player in the January window for a lot less money. So if you're a Newcastle fan, even though there's probably no replacing, right, a world-class striker like Alexander Isak, players like this don't go on trees. Like, there is no replacement. Like, I don't think anybody out here thinks Benjamin Šeško is going to come into Newcastle and score as many goals, right, as Isak. I mean, let's look at Isak in the league last season. 23 goals in 34 games. I mean, the guy is absolutely prolific. Season before, 21 goals in 30 games. So Isak's been a 20-goal a season player in the Premier League, yeah, for the best part of 2 years. I don't think Benjamin Šeško comes to Newcastle and has given you that same output. What Newcastle will do, right, is they will sell Isak for 135 million. 65 of that will go to Šeško. 30 of that will go to Yoane Wieser from Brentford, who is going to sign for Newcastle, in my opinion. Maybe talk about that a tiny bit later, but he's another player who at the minute is refusing to train, not showing up to training at Brentford. Very, very similar to the Viktor Gyökeres situation. Wieser had an agreement with the club to say, look, if somebody comes in and offers 26 million, 30 million, you will let me go. Newcastle have come in and bid 26 million, 25 million for Wieser, and Brentford have gone back on their word, and the player's upset, so he's no longer turning up to training. So Weezer's going to end up at Newcastle. So what Newcastle plan to do, in my opinion, is sell Isak, and then, like I said, spread those goals. Spread Isak's 23 and 34. You spread that against, a couple of players. So 10 of those will go to Šeško, 5 or 6 will go to Wieser, and another 5 or 6 will go elsewhere. So that's what Newcastle plan to do. For me, like I said before, this deal will happen. The media were reporting yesterday that Liverpool won't bid again. Liverpool absolutely will bid again. And I tell you exactly what's going to happen with Isak now. And this is part of the problem that we have in football, right? With agents and players and things like that. The agent and Isak will be working with Liverpool against Newcastle. So what's happening now is Isak's agent will be talking to Liverpool, and the agent will be telling Liverpool will be telling Isak's agent, listen, right, we want you to kick up as much fuss as possible. We want you to be as difficult as possible. We are interested in you. Don't overtrain. Don't get injured. Don't commit yourself too much to Newcastle Football Club. We will be coming back in with a bid at some point. That's 100% what Liverpool Football Club will be telling Isak's agent. 100%. They'll be telling him, don't overtrain, don't train too hard, look after yourself, don't get injured, take it easy. Don't go into any 50-50 tackles. We are still interested in you. We 100%, we will be coming back in for you. And once that message goes from Liverpool to Isak's agent, and Isak's agent relays that to Isak, right? Isak's not going to give anything in training. He's not going to want to give his all for the club. It's going to be a big problem. So, like I said before, in my opinion, we will know for sure if this deal is going to happen in the next couple of days, because one, we'll see if Isak comes back to Newcastle. He's due back to training with Newcastle next week. We'll see if he actually shows up for training. As it stands right now, as you can see from Keith Downey on Sky Sports, Alexander Isak is training individually at his former club, Real Sociedad's facilities, amid uncertainty over his Newcastle future. I mean, that is a huge red flag that the dude's not even training with his current club. He's training with his old club. That kind of tells you everything you need to know, right, about where this deal is going. All right. So like I said before, will Isak actually turn up, yeah, and go back to training with Newcastle? If he doesn't, right, if he doesn't show back up or if it gets delayed, you can take it to the bank that he's out. I think even if he does come back, you can still take it to the bank he's out. I think a lot of it depends on Šeško and Ollie Watkins. That's what I think. I think Newcastle, his primary target is Šeško. I think if Newcastle can't get Šeško, and I think we'll know about that in the next 48 hours, if we hear that Šeško's preference is Manchester United, I think what we'll see is Newcastle then pivot to signing Ollie Watkins. And I think we'll see a bid go in there. I think Ollie Watkins has been trying to get out of Aston Villa since last January when Arsenal made a bid for him at the end of the window, which Aston Villa didn't accept. Arsenal actually had an agreement with Ollie Watkins to come and join Arsenal last January or last window, and Villa rejected it. So I think Ollie Watkins is had it in his head about moving to a bigger club and playing Champions League football for some time. So I think Newcastle end up pivoting over to Ollie Watkins. But I do think, yeah, that Isak to Liverpool is 100% on. Boxing Hotspur is the only person watching in a minute, but I appreciate you. He said, surprised teams haven't been linked with Mateta. Man United were linked with Mateta. Man United were linked with Mateta for again, Man United were linked with Mateta a lot more than Šeško. This Šeško to Man United thing has only really had traction in the last week, 2-3 weeks. So the last, like I say, 3 weeks, I would say, Man United to Šeško, really. It really started after they lost Viktor Gyökeres to Arsenal. But Man United have been linked with pretty much every striker other than Šeško, which kind of, like I said before, for me is a big red flag. Like, why are you looking at this guy, or why are you so interested in this guy so late in this window? You know, for 70 million. He's worth 60 to 70 million. That's a lot to spend on a player, you know. Like I said before, if I was them, I wouldn't necessarily panic buy. You know, because like I said before, I don't think he was ever their priority. Mateta we heard about from the beginning of the window. Mateta was in that list of players for me, for United, along with, they were talking about Vlahovic, Mateta, all kinds of players. But Šeško wasn't one that I heard of until late, so we'll have to see. But yeah, so like I said before, let me quickly say on Isak as well, right? And why I think it would be a good idea for Isak for Newcastle to sell Isak, and then we'll quickly move on to Viktor Gyökeres and Arsenal, right? And we'll talk about some managers, because I think, yeah, Miguel Arteta is under severe pressure. I think honestly, the two managers that are going to be under the most pressure, I'm talking about top flight managers, right? Top club managers are Arteta and Amorim. I think are going to be under big pressure going into this Premier League season. I think Ruben Amorim is going to be under. And if you just look at Manchester United's running, which you should be able to see if I can get it up on the left-hand side of the screen right now. I mean, if you just look at Manchester United's running and Arsenal's running, I mean, their running is unbelievable. Look, they start off at home to Arsenal, Man United. Fulham away is no gimme. They've slipped up at Fulham away a couple of times. Burnley at home, you think is 3 points, and then look, they're away to Manchester City, at home to Chelsea. Brentford away is not a gimme. Sunderland, you would think is 3 points at home, and then they've got to go to Anfield. And they possibly, look at the Manchester United, looks, the 18th of October, possibly got to go to Anfield and front up against Isak, Hugo Ekitike, Florian Wirtz, and all kinds of other players, yeah? I mean, that first 8 games, and we'll go to Arsenal as well, that first 8 games of the season for United and Arsenal is an absolute bloodbath. I'm telling you right now, managers could lose their jobs over their first 8 games. Boxing Hotspur, what do you think about that in the chat? Let me know. I'm telling you right now, that first 8 games, we'll look at Arsenal's first 8 games. Brutal. I mean, I can't remember the last time, yeah, we had a Premier League running, yeah, where the top clubs had that level of competition in their first 8 to 9 games. It is absolutely unbelievable. We haven't got Arsenal's running. So I think Amorim, we'll talk about it in a minute, I think Amorim is under huge pressure. If Amorim was to get fired by Christmas, I would not be surprised. I'm genuinely telling you that now about Ruben Amorim. If Ruben Amorim doesn't make it till November, December, right, I would not be surprised. And let me just show you this one more time, because I know people will be watching this and thinking I'm talking garbage. Look at these 8 games. One more time. Manchester United, first 8 games of the season. Arsenal at home against Viktor Gyökeres. They could easily lose that game. They can easily get beat in that game. You get beat in that game, that puts pressure on the squad, pressure on the manager. Your next game's away to Fulham. Your third game at home to Burnley. That's a gimme. I'm not expecting United to drop points at Burnley. But look at this. Your fourth game of the season. Look, Manchester City away from home. I mean, one of the hardest games in world football. Chelsea, Chelsea have got basically 2 or 3 squads of players. And again, you're looking at this season, right? Depth is really important if you're in the Champions League. Because if you're in the Champions League, you're going to be playing 50 games, 60 games, right? As a whole. League, Champions League, FA Cup, EFL Cup, Carabao Cup, whatever it is. You're going to be playing 50, 60 games, right? If you're looking to make, a good inroads into all those trophies, right? Chelsea have got a very strong squad, and Chelsea have got squad depth. Yeah? Chelsea have got squad depth. And you see it, like I said before, their performance in the World Club Cup final against PSG, they absolutely obliterated what most people would say is the best team in the world. And let me say, the World Club Cup final is a legitimate final. You want to win World Club Cup finals. I'm sorry. People can question the tournament and say it's not a good tournament. It's a Mickey Mouse tournament. You hear some of the guys over at, ESPN saying it's Mickey Mouse. Trust me, right? The World Club Cup, you want to win that because you can only really be in that competition if you traditionally, it's changed now, but you could only ever get into it if you won the Champions League. So it was a once in a lifetime opportunity to win that trophy. It's a big game, and Chelsea obliterated Paris Saint-Germain. They go to Old Trafford, for Manchester United's 5th game of the season. 5th game of the season. And then, like I said, Brentford away, no gimme. And then Liverpool, where they've been historically over the last couple of years. United have really struggled against Liverpool, and we all remember the 7-0. Boxing Hotspur says, I think Amorim is a dead man walking. Defense, keeper, and midfield not up to it. Shit build up. We'll talk about that. We'll come back to that in a second. Hold that thought. I will come back to that. I agree with you, Boxing Hotspur. Man United have looked very, very promising in pre-season, right? They've looked very promising in pre-season. We'll talk about that in a bit. So pre-season has given them room to believe, room to hope. But honestly, he is under severe pressure. Let's talk about another manager who's under pressure, Mikel Arteta. Mikel Arteta is under pressure, in my opinion. That pressure will drop significantly if Liverpool sign Alexander Isak. Because if Liverpool do sign Isak, Liverpool will be far and away, right, the favourites to win the Premier League, right? We can all agree with that, right? So, in a weird way, if Liverpool actually sign Isak, it's actually good for Arteta's job, right? Because Liverpool will be the overwhelming favourites to win the league. Nobody will be expecting Arsenal to win the league, right? If Liverpool go and sign Isak, right? So the pressure on him could be relieved. But if you look at Arsenal's running. First game of the season, all right, as we can see here, all right, away to Manchester United. Second game of the season, a home game against Leeds. You would think that's a gimme. Leeds, you think will be struggling to stay up, right, and fight relegation. Look at this. Arsenal's third game of the season, Anfield. Look at this. Arsenal, for 2 out of their first 3 games of the season, they got to go to Old Trafford and Anfield. I mean, listen, it's not a joke. Their 5th game of the season, they've got Man City. So look at Arsenal. I mean, Arsenal got a harder running than United, in my opinion. Who do you think's got the harder running? For me, Arsenal got the harder running. Look at that first 5 games. Man U, Liverpool, Man City in them first 5 games. Listen, Arsenal could easily lose 3 out of their first 5 games. Easily. They could easily lose 3 out of their first games. 3 out of their first games. So if they do that, Arteta is going to be under severe pressure from the fan base. And again, you continue to look at Arsenal's schedule. After Man City, they've got to go to St James's Park against Newcastle. They can easily lose these games. Listen. The Premier League, I've never seen a Premier League where the big clubs have had to go through the trenches like this. I think it's going to be one of the most exciting starts to the season we've ever seen. And I think some top managers, are going to go through some tough times. Like I said before, I would keep an eye on Arteta and Amorim. I don't think Arsenal would sack Arteta, right? I'm not saying that, but I'm talking about pressure. I think Arteta is going to be under severe... Let me tell you something right now. Last season, quickly, we saw Liverpool get a good start in the league, right? We saw Liverpool get a good start in the league and nobody ever recovered from that. Is that right, Boxing Oxford? We saw that. We saw Liverpool get a good start in the league, right? And once Liverpool got that good start in the league, nobody recovered. Let me tell you something. Arsenal could easily lose, right? If you look at these first 8 games they've got here, right? Hold on. If you look at Arsenal's first 8 games, I could easily see Arsenal losing to Newcastle, City, Liverpool, and Man U. They could legitimately lose 4 out of them first 8 games. Arteta, can you imagine watching AFL TV if that happens? I mean, it will be absolutely unbelievable to watch that. AFL TV. The Arsenal fan base will go into complete and utter mutiny. So we talk about managers that I think are in danger, yeah, of being in trouble. Arteta is definitely on that list. Like I said, very unlikely Arsenal would sack him, but this is a man, in my opinion, who is going to be under severe pressure. That's one of the hardest 8 games I've ever seen in the Premier League. Boxing Hotspur says, so you're saying Taylor's saying he can barely hear me. Boxing Hotspur, is the sound still okay? So someone's saying they can barely hear me. Let me just check my sound in a minute. No, I can hear myself pretty clear, Taylor. So I think the sound's okay. Guys in the chat, let me know. Yeah, Oliver Moore's saying the sound is fine. All right, no worries, Taylor. Okay, guys, right. Let's just quickly lost my track of thought. Yeah, so I'm thinking when you're talking about who is going to win the Premier League, right? Who is going to be the favourites for the Premier League? This is what I say, right? Keep an eye on Chelsea, and like I said before, people will laugh. Don't be surprised, yeah, if you see some clubs like Spurs, Chelsea's. Don't be surprised if you see them get a very, very good start to the Premier, because like I said before, their run-ins, right? Their run-ins are better than the run-ins that Arsenal have got, that Man U have got. So don't be surprised early on to see Spurs doing a lot better than you expect in the league. Chelsea, don't be surprised. Chelsea actually, I think, topped the league early on last season as well, actually. Chelsea were fighting with Liverpool for top spot early on. Don't be surprised, yeah, if you see a few curveballs in there, all right? And we move on. Quickly, I was going to talk about Viktor Gyökeres, right? But because we've talked quite a bit about Arsenal and their running, I'm not going to talk about Viktor Gyökeres just yet. I will come back to Gyökeres at a minute. I just want to ask guys in the chat. Guys in the chat, for anybody who's watching, yeah, I hope you're enjoying the show. First ever show, brand new show. We're starting from ground zero. We're starting from scratch. Who do you think, let me ask you a few questions. Who do you think will win the league? Who do you think are the favourites for the league title? Do you think Isak will end up going to Liverpool? Let me say something and quickly, I'll say it again. This is what I wanted to say, right? People are assuming that Isak goes to Liverpool, he's going to be a success. He is going to be the most under pressure striker in world football. Would you agree with me on that in the chat? If you're there in the chat, press 1, right? Would you agree with me on that in the chat? If Isak signs to Liverpool, I think he becomes the most under pressure striker in world football. Like, listen, when these players sign for big money, do you remember this guy? Look, do you remember this player? One of the most recent players to go to a club for 100 million plus. Do you remember this guy, Jack Grealish? Jack Grealish went to Manchester City, right? For 100 million pounds, right? Manchester City, right? He won a treble. Jack Grealish can't find a football club today. That's how much these price tags can absolutely destroy a player. These price tags can end players' careers. Jack Grealish signed for Man City for 100 million pounds 2 or 3 seasons ago. He won a treble, right? Jack Grealish was a starter in a treble-winning squad. Jack Grealish cannot find a football club. Now, we all know wages is part of that, right? But let's be honest, there aren't that many top clubs that are hovering around Jack Grealish. What do you think about that, and guys in the chat? Yes or no? There aren't that many top clubs that are hovering around. We've seen players with big wages, right? And they're too expensive for clubs, but the clubs still hover around. The clubs are still interested. The clubs still want to see if they can get a loan deal. The clubs still want to see if the players will reduce their wage. A prime example of that is Marcus Rashford, right? Marcus Rashford, prime example. He was on £300,000 a week, right? His wages were too high for Barcelona. Barcelona still persisted with the player because they want the player. They like the profile of the player. They needed a left winger. They needed a 1v1 specialist. They need a player like Marcus Rashford who's going to stretch defenses, right? I'm not talking about vertically stretch defense. I'm talking about horizontally, right? Jack Grealish isn't a player that does that, in my opinion, which is why, like I said before, he's been benched in favour of someone like Jeremy Doku, right? When you've got teams these days, well, I'm not a tactical, right? But I'm just saying, and guys in the chat, let me know if you think I'm right or wrong. When you've got these teams these days, you've got so many teams, right, that are settling into low blocks in the Premier League now. You've got so many teams that are defending deep in the box with a line of 5 and a line of 4, or a line of 4 and a line of 4, right? You've got so many teams now that, you know, like I said before, when the opposition are in that final phase, that third phase, that finishing phase, that creation phase, they're dropping deep into the box with lines of 5 and 4. You need players that are going to stretch defenses and open up gaps. You need 1v1 specialists, because the box, the final third is getting so condensed now in football. The final third is getting so condensed. There's a load of congestion. There's not a lot of space. Teams are really organised. There's not a lot of space between the lines, yeah? So like I said before, players like Jack Grealish, right? Are they desirable in today's market? I'm not sure players like Jack Grealish are ideal in today's market. I think, like I said before, there's a reason why Barcelona went for Marcus Rashford. I think there's a reason why Jeremy Doku is starting at Man City. I think there's a reason why we're seeing, clubs want to sign these players. Garnacho, we'll talk about him in a minute. He will go to Chelsea, in my opinion, right? Garnacho. There's a reason why it's this kind of profile of player. Direct, quick, semi-decent in a 1-versus-1 scenario. You need players. What you want is when these players go out wide, yeah? The thing about Jack Grealish is, quickly say, when Jack Grealish goes out wide, to me, he's not a threat to beat a man. So like I said before, you can, if you're an opposition wing back and Jack Grealish is in front of you, you're not calling for help. What do you guys think about that in a chat quickly? Press 1 if you agree with me, press 2 if you disagree. Does it make sense what I'm saying, right? If you're being attacked by Manchester City, right, and you're sitting in your low block 4-4-2, your low block 4-5-1, and you're an opposition wing back and you've got Jack Grealish in front of you, Jack Grealish ain't going to beat you for pace. Jack Grealish ain't going to take you to the touchline, trick you and get around you. Does that make sense? Jack Grealish quite often turns back and moves back towards the opposition goal, or he's going to play that incisive pass from the half space in towards the box. That makes sense, but he's not a threat to beat you. So you see him in front of you as a fullback, you're not calling for help. Whereas if you've got Rashford in front of you, if you've got Doku in front of you, if you've got Amad Diallo in front of you, right, from Manchester United, I think he's one of the best one-on-one players in the league. Amad Diallo. Talk about him in a minute. I think he will suffer under Ruben Amorim's system of having wing backs and no wingers. I think you're going to see him this season. It wouldn't surprise me if Amad Diallo struggles to get into Man United squad, by the way. And I think we could see a move happening, not obviously in this window, but I think we could see a potential move for Amad Diallo at the end of the season, right? But what I'm saying is, Grealish isn't that kind of threat. Boxing Hotspur says, let's see what he said. He said something about Grealish at Spurs, and I thought that was really, really interesting. He said he would love Grealish at Spurs for a season-long loan. I don't watch a lot of Spurs, so you told me Boxing Hotspur. Why would that be? What kind of profile does he bring? And he agrees with me about Doku and Cherky and things like that. Pip Andrew says a tight defense is crucial. If you ask me, you can become untouchable. Like for me, players like Jack Grealish, like I said before, obviously he's a very, very good passer. He's a good crosser. But like I said before, I don't see him, yeah? And again, I'm not a tactico, but I don't see him as a big threat. So like I said before, you've got Jack Grealish, £100 million, can't find a club. The only club sniffing around Grealish right now is allegedly Everton. Can you imagine the fall off? You're going from a treble winning squad at City to ending up with Everton. No disrespect to Everton fans, right? But that is a huge, huge fall off in quality, yeah? So what I'm saying is this. Isak to Newcastle. The pressure that this guy's going to be under is going to be absolutely monumental. Like people are assuming that he's going to perform. But when a club signs you, yeah, for 120 million, I mean, they've already rejected a bid of... Newcastle. Newcastle have already rejected 110 million, right? They've already rejected 110 million. So this guy's going to go for 120, 130. If Isak comes to Liverpool, right? And let's just say he scores... I'm trying to get him up on the screen. Let's just say Isak comes to Liverpool and scores 20 goals in his first season. Do you think that's enough to be considered a success when the guy's just the club have just paid, 100 million plus for you? I'm not sure these numbers could be. Look at this season from Isak. 2023-24. Isak at Liverpool. 21 goals in 30 games. Do you think that Liverpool would consider Alexander Isak a success? 21 goals in 30 games for 130 million pounds, unless Liverpool don't win the league. I think, like I said before, the pressure is monumental. I mean, Erling Haaland just scored 34 goals, right, last season, right, across competitions, right? But Erling Haaland scored 34 goals across all competitions, yeah? In a Man City side where he was getting like a handful of touches every game. Like Haaland was going through games, he was getting like 4 or 5 touches for the entire fucking game. And he still managed to score 34 goals the entire season. And people said he had a bad season. People said Haaland had a bad season. The amount of pressure that Isak's going to be under at that football club is absolutely ginormous. Like, I don't think it's a given that he goes to Liverpool, and I don't think it's a given that he's a success at that club, you know. That's my opinion, you know, because the expectation levels are going to go up like 100-fold. I mean, Liverpool already won the league at a canter last year, so they'll be expected to defend the league, and they'll be expected to make serious headway in the Champions League. Boxing Hotspur says, I think if Isak scores 20 plus for 3 or 4 seasons and picks up trophies along the way, it becomes acceptable. Same with Alisson for 70 million at the time. It was mad. The service he was given makes it a bargain. I agree with you on that. Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I think he's going to be under pressure though from the get-go, Hotspur. And you've seen how it goes with these big money signings. How many, let me tell you, I could be wrong. How many big money signings have we seen in football? Big money signings that have actually truly lived up to the hype. I can't remember how much Erling Haaland was signed for from Manchester City. I'm actually going to quickly Google that off screen. Erling Haaland is definitely one. Came into the Premier League, yeah, and scored at an incredible rate from day one. Absolutely positively was worth the money. I can't remember how much he was signed for by Manchester City. So I'm going to quickly check that. All right, I'm going to quickly ask my AI assistant, how much, what's it, did Erling Haaland cost Man City? I mean, he's a phenomenal player, but I'm trying to think, right, about, you know, high level, you know, high profile signings that have actually gone there and delivered. I'm telling you right now, it's not many. You know, we've just discussed Jack Grealish. It's not many. So, yeah, Haaland was signed. It wasn't even a big money signing. They're saying he was signed for around what? It's saying including additional agents' fees, bonuses, and other costs, 85 million. But I mean, if you remove add-ons, fees, and everything, Haaland was close to 60 million. So again, like I said before, it's very difficult to do it. Very difficult to do it. Like I said, it wouldn't surprise me if Isak signs for Liverpool. I think he will, and it wouldn't surprise me if he has a slow start, and it wouldn't surprise me if the pressure begins to mount, because that is unbelievable. Right, we've got a couple more minutes left on the show. We've got about 5 or 10 minutes left to go on the show. So let's just go back and do a quick recap of what we've spoken about, and then we'll go through. So what we've spoken about is the following. If you're just joining, Newcastle have made a bid this morning for Benjamin Šeško. The bid is £65.5 million. So Manchester United have got 2 choices, because they are the other club fighting for Šeško. They can either match that bid for Leipzig, or the second option is Leipzig yesterday asked for Rasmus Højlund in a player swap. If you're a Man United fan or a fan from another club, would you do that deal? Would you do Šeško plus say would you do Højlund and say 30 million for Benjamin Šeško? Would you do that as a player swap? If you're a Manchester United fan watching, does he add anything to United? If you're a fan of another club, would you have Benjamin Šeško at your squad? Do you think he's worth this current valuation? Again, we've looked at his goal scoring ratio. He averages about 1 goal every 3 games in the Bundesliga. I'm not sure personally that's worth £65 million. I think Man United need a proven prolific striker. Would you, if you were a fan of another club, would you go for Šeško, or would you go for someone like Ollie Watkins, who's available at a cheaper price, by the way? Ollie Watkins right now, you can probably get away with 45, 50 million. We'll get you Ollie Watkins right now. Do you go for him? He's 30 years old. So a lot of clubs are looking at the age factor and they're thinking, look, this is a guy who's right at his peak or possibly coming to the end of his peak. So that's the problem with Ollie Watkins. He's a slightly older player, but like I said before, he is Prem proven. Šeško's not. So Manchester United and Newcastle battling out for Šeško. Leipzig, in my opinion, want him to go to Newcastle because Newcastle have the money. But I think the player himself would prefer a move to Manchester United. We've talked about that deal. We talked about Šeško to Isak to Liverpool. We think that deal. I think that deal will happen. I think what you're going to see is Isak will continue to hold out for a move, and I think Liverpool will come in for a bid. Not now, but there's a month left to go in this window. I think Liverpool will play the long game, and I think Liverpool will come back in with a bid around 120, 130 million for Newcastle, and Newcastle will receive that money in a couple of weeks. I'm saying 3-4 weeks. Again, let me quickly say something as well, quickly, and I want to say something right now. One of the biggest mistakes, right, that I see clubs making at the minute is with their treatment of football players, right? Let me give you an example. But a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, right? But I want to show you something. This is where a lot of clubs are going wrong in their transfer window. And United are a prime example. Newcastle so far have had a really bad window. But Newcastle have had a bad window because players they haven't got that pull at the minute, you know? Newcastle haven't got that pull at the minute. And all the players that they're sort of interested in and going for, they're trying to go for Weezer. Brentford are playing games with Weezer. Šeško probably would prefer a move to Man U. Who did Newcastle? They got rejected for a couple of other players as well. So Newcastle, even though they're a Champions League club and a big club, they're finding it difficult to compete with the pull of some of the more established Premier League clubs. So they haven't had a good transfer window either. But I want to say one thing about something, right? And no other channel will tell you this, but I'm going to tell you how it is, right? And this is going to be very, very unpopular amongst fans. Fans will be very, very unhappy with me for saying this, but I'm going to say it regardless, right? It's about some of the way these clubs are dealing with players, right? And I'm going to give Manchester United at the minute as a prime example. You've got a couple of players at this club who are unhappy. Marcus Rashford, who ended up going to Barcelona, Jadon Sancho, Alexander Garnacho, and Antony, right? The reason why this club is struggling to sell these players is because of treatment. Here's why. If you ostracize these players, right? So if you turn around and ostracize a player, so if you take Marcus Rashford, for example, if you do what Man United did to Marcus Rashford, right? And you say, listen, you can't train with the current squad, right? He's not allowed to train with the current squad. You're not allowed to be around the current squad. How Manchester United did it with these players they were only allowed to show up to Carrington after 5 p.m. So imagine that, yeah? You're still part of a team, you're still part of a group, right? Even though the club are trying to move you on. You're not allowed, yeah, to be a part of the group. You're not even allowed to show up to Carrington and train until after 5 p.m. in the afternoon, where everybody's gone, where you've only got a couple of daylight hours left. That's pretty disgusting, by the way, when you think about it. 5 p.m. You've only got like 2, 3, 4 hours left of daylight left in a day. I mean, by the time you've probably finished your session, the sun's starting to drop and it's starting to get dark. It's embarrassing, right? Okay. Now, when clubs see this kind of behavior, they see players not training. They see players being ostracized, yeah? They see players not being allowed to train with the group, right? They see players not allowed to use the certain changing rooms, right? They see players not allowed to go on the pre-season tour. Do you know what happens when clubs see that? That makes clubs wait until the end of the window to try and get a bargain. Does that make sense? If you're in the chat and you're listening, press 1 if you agree with me on that. Press 2 if you disagree. If you're trying to sell a player, if you're trying to sell an Antony, if you're trying to sell a Garnacho, right, and you're treating him in the manner you're treating him, it's quite clear that there's no way that these players are going to play for your team again, right? It's quite clear. Like, you're not even letting them train. You're not letting them use facilities. They're not allowed to show up to the training ground until after 5 p.m. Every man and their dog knows there is no way that these players are going to end up staying with the football club. So what that happens is clubs wait. Clubs know you're going to be desperate and clubs wait. Why would a club make a bid now with 1 month to go in a transfer window? You're seeing this happen. The reason why I mention this is you're seeing it happen with this deal here. Alexander Garnacho to Chelsea. The reason why Chelsea haven't come in and made a bid for Alexander Garnacho is, why would you make a bid right now? To make a bid right now with a month to go in the window would be stupid. The smart play, right? The smart play, as you can see here from Fabrizio Romano, Alejandro Garnacho keen on joining Chelsea. Look at this. If you don't believe me, you can see it here. Chelsea considering to bid later this month for Garnacho, right? All these clubs are going to wait like vultures until the final days, a week or so of the window, and they're going to try and snap themselves up a bargain. You're going to see a lot of movement for these players at the end of the window when clubs get desperate. This is what I'm saying. These clubs, right, like Manchester United and these clubs who need to sell 3 or 4 players, right? They need to reduce the wage bill. They need to sell 3 or 4 players, right? The way they're treating these players doesn't conduce sales. And you're going to see that. Don't be surprised at the end of the window if you see Antony end up at Real Betis, yeah, on some crazy ass loan deal where Manchester United are still playing some of his salary. Don't be surprised if you see that. Don't be surprised if you see this. All right, look at this. Look, this is coming in this morning from Graham Bailey. Graham Bailey's not a great source, but I'm just using Antony as an example. Look at this. Look, Antony's camp have made it clear they only want Betis. They're going to wait till the end of the window. Antony's team will wait till the end of the window And United, in my opinion, will be forced into a deal where they'll have to end up paying some of his wages. He'll go back out on loan again and have to pay some of his wages, or some kind of other ridiculous concession will have to be made. And the reason why is because of the way he's been ostracised by Ruben Amorim and by the management. You've got to think carefully, if you're a football club, about the way you treat players, because when you degrade players, right? Listen, when you degrade players, when you treat players like they're less than, when you treat players like they're cast-offs from a YMCA charity shop, other clubs don't make big bids for those type of players. It's just basic supply and demand, right? Doesn't make other clubs want to make big bids. Big problems you're going to see towards the end of the window. Right, I will end by saying that is pretty much going to be it for today's show. I hope you have enjoyed today's show. If you're listening to this on demand, please drop a comment, please leave. Listen, I'll make it clear. Once you're watching a transfer window, I can't wait for the start of the season. On the next show, we'll talk more about Viktor Gyökeres and Arsenal. That's going to be a very interesting one. Will he be a flop? Will he not? We'll actually look at some of his touches. I was actually supposed to look at it in today's video. We've got a video here of Viktor Gyökeres' 10-minute cameo against Spurs in pre-season. So we will have a look at that. We'll have a look at some of Gyökeres' touches, yeah? And we'll see, because some people think he's going to be a flop. I don't think so. I think Viktor Gyökeres is a gunman, but we'll wait and see, all right? But things to take away from this video. Listen, the start to the season is going to be the most intense start to a Premier League season we've ever had, in my opinion. I think several managers are going to be under superb pressure. I think most people are expecting Keith Andrews from Brentford to be the first sacking of the season, right? So if you look at first manager to be sacked, I think if you look at the bookies odds, I think most people have got Keith Andrews from Brentford, yeah, as the favourite to be sacked immediately, because Brentford have lost Bremo. They're going to lose Visa to Newcastle. You know, they've got other players that want out, and people aren't a big fan of Keith Andrews as a manager. So most people will tell you first manager to be sacked, yeah, is going to be Keith Andrews. But after that, I'm telling you now, we've looked at the run-ins, we looked at that first 8 games. I'm telling you right now, Ruben Amorim, yeah, is definitely one to keep an eye on in them first 8 games of the season. Manchester United have spent close to 170 million in this window. Actually, since Boxing Hotspur's here as well, I forgot to add, and we should have said, Thomas Frank at Spurs is another manager, I'll quickly say, who is also going to be under severe pressure. And I forgot to mention it, and I will quickly mention that now. Talk about managers that are going to be under pressure. Amorim, let me tell you right now, if he doesn't make it through past November, I would not be shocked. Thomas Frank, people will laugh. Let me tell you something quickly. The last manager that managed Tottenham Hotspur Football Club won a trophy. Spurs hadn't won a trophy in Lord knows how many years. Spurs ended up winning the second biggest European trophy in football, right? The Europa League, right? It's the second biggest European trophy in football. The amount of pressure on Thomas Frank to perform, right, and to put Spurs in a position to win trophies is going to be absolutely immense. I'm telling you right now. Listen, mark my words. Ange Postecoglou will be back in the Premier League in a year or two. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. Ange Postecoglou will be back in the Premier League imminently. With his kind of record, listen, whatever anybody says about Ange, poor defense, you know, suicide football, you know, fat Ange, whatever you like to think about Ange Postecoglou. Ange Postecoglou has won a trophy with a Premier League club. That Jose Mourinho didn't, for whatever reason. Jose Mourinho didn't even win a trophy with Spurs. Many a good manager come to Spurs and has fallen at the final hurdle. All right, then Mourinho was sacked by fucking Daniel Levy, but Pochettino and such. Many a good manager has come to Spurs and failed to win a trophy. Let me tell you something about Thomas Frank. That's another top manager to keep your eye on this season, because if Spurs do not get going at the beginning of the season, let me tell you something. The pressure is going to be immense, and we know what Daniel Levy's like. You know what Daniel Levy's like, and you know how that club is run. So those are the 2 big names I'd watch out for. Amorim, potentially huge trouble. They're looking promising in pre-season, Amorim, but I tell you what, potentially huge trouble. I'm not sure if Šeško's the right signing for them. I think they're going to get shafted on Antony by Betis. I think that Man United are going to get shafted for Alexander Garnacho. And I think that, though, like I said before, the Amorim's football and the way he plays with these 2 number 10s and, you know, potential lack of width could be a real problem. I think he's under the scope. And I also think, I don't think he'll be sacked, but I think Miguel Arteta, them first 8 games are absolutely brutal. Them first 8 games for Arsenal are the hardest 8 games I think I've ever seen, yeah, in a start to a Premier League season. Again, I'll put them on the right-hand side of the screen. I don't think Arsenal will part ways with Arteta, but I think, yeah, first 8 games of the season, I think potentially Arsenal could lose 4 out of them first 8 games if they're not careful. I think Miguel Arteta could be under as much pressure as he's ever been in his managerial career. Hope you've enjoyed the show. Please leave me some feedback, whether you think the mic is poor, the visual quality is poor. Please leave me some feedback. It will be taken on board. Please enjoy the show. And the next show will be, listen, imminently. As soon as there's news, as soon as there is breaking news to be talked about, we will talk about it. Take care of yourselves and each other.